Hi, I'm Sayuri, and this is my submission video for the any percent easy category of Slender: The Arrival. This is the PC version of the game. This is a dubbing over of my personal best video. Because of that, there's no game audio that will be heard, but most of it is just like grunts, footsteps, ambient noise, ambient music, etc. Anyways, let's start. Sometimes I'll be pausing the VOD just to explain some things, just of note. So, anyways, this is the first level of the game, the Prologue. Um, we're walking towards, what you're supposed to be doing is walking towards a house. You're playing as a girl trying to find her lost friend. So, basically, what you're supposed to do at the beginning here, you need to walk towards, the house and go inside of it. Normally, you're supposed to find a flashlight. Then you go upstairs to the top floor of the house and you find a key, and then you use that key to unlock a door, and then you enter the room, or you unlock the door, and then you basically it's just a bunch of stuff that you have to do normally. And there's a skip that was recently discovered, house skip, where you skip having to do all of that, and we're coming across it here right now. So how there are two skips in the game, both of them recent discoveries, and they're sort of similar. So for this first skip here, you're nudging yourself in this corner, and you're sort of moving back and forth, like wiggling back and forth up this kind of ladder, and it's kind of like moving up in step increments, and eventually you'll move high enough so that you can bypass the fence, go over it, and go out of bounds. And thankfully you don't fall out of bounds because there is collision out here for some reason. So now at this point, the entire level is basically skipped. Now we're just walking towards the end of the level. And then the run like really picks up at the next level, which is the 8 pages, but I'll explain that when we get to there. So, one thing or first of several things I want to go over is how important sprinting is in this game. So there's like several kinds of movement in general. So there's walking normally, as I'm doing now, and as I'm doing now in the VOD. And then there's like slow sprinting. So this game has stamina. Basically, you after you run for a certain amount of time, your stamina for running runs out, and then you're just sort of left like moving in this like you kind of have the running animation, but you're not going nearly as fast, and it's actually a bit slower. Like it's slower than just walking. Now, normally what you're supposed to do, you can like you can stop moving or not stop moving. You can stop sprinting, and then you can just walk normally and let the sprint stamina refresh, and then you can use that to be able to start running again. Now, there are several points in the run where you actually don't want to refresh this you don't want to refresh the sprint stamina. One example of this is in the third level of the game, Into the Abyss, and in that entire level, it's best to just hold down the sprint the entire time. You start out, so you start out. I'll get more into it in depth when we get there, but uh, part of part of the level you start on the outside of a mine, and then the rest of the level takes place inside of an abandoned mine shaft. And then once you get close to there, you just hold down the sprint button, and sure, your sprint will eventually run out, but it'll just be faster. Just keep holding down the sprint button and running around the place doing what you're supposed to do, instead of wasting time trying to let the stamina refresh. Anyways, this is the second level of the game, the 8 pages, as I mentioned earlier. The goal of this level is to go around the level and find these 8 pieces of paper that are scattered all over the place for some reason. Now, because this is the easy difficulty, you only have to find 4 of them, and then you can end the level. So let me go over that for a sec. So after you collect 4 pages, you need to find Slender Man, and then you have to run into him, which seems counterintuitive, but that's how you're supposed to end the level. Now, when you start running into him, Lauren, the character you're playing as, starts going like really crazy, and she just runs all over the place. And Slenderman, like the screen gets all staticky and stuff, and in those sections, you can end the level sooner if you when Lauren's running around all crazy like that. If you find Slenderman and then you just run towards him, then it like teleports you to the next part of the sequence, and then you just repeat that, and then you can end the crazy running a lot sooner. And then the third level will begin. So as for Slenderman himself, this is the first level where he can appear in the prologue, but he can't harm you. Now, this is the level where he actually starts doing things, and he's not really too dangerous as long as you don't get as long as you don't get like ridiculously close to him, then you're good. He's not much to worry about. He's just kind of a nuisance. Unless you already have the 4 pages, then you'll want to run into him, as I said earlier. Alright, so another thing I want to cover in this level, um, so the pages, the way the pages spawn in this level is RNG. So there are 8 pages, but there are, excuse me, there are 8 different pages, but there are 9 different locations in the level where a page can be. So, I'm gonna just mess around here for a sec. So, I don't know if it can be visible in this VOD. But alright, so this building right here, alright, so this building that Lauren is pointing at, so pages can spawn in here several different times. Now, this building is fairly large just from the area that it's in. You want to avoid this building as much as possible. Pages can spawn in here, but well, I'm going to repeat myself, but you want to avoid it as much as possible because there are tons of different locations within the building that pages can spawn, and it's really bad luck. Like, you usually never get an optimal location in there. You can be wandering around there for quite a while, maybe even a minute, and in a short run like this, that's a big time waster. So you want to avoid going there whenever possible. So going back to where I was. Alright, so yeah, this is just, you can see the screen's going a little crazy, and that was what I was talking about. If I can just go back. Okay. So this is the whole sequence. Find the 4 pages, you run into Slenderman, and in these sequences where Lauren is running around all crazy, you try and find Slenderman, and you just run towards him, and you can end the sequence much sooner than usual. See? That was like, what was that, 5 or 6 seconds? So yeah, that's why it's really useful to run into Slenderman. Anyways, this is the third level of the game. This is called Into the Abyss, as I mentioned it earlier. So Into the Abyss, the beginning of the level is the beginning of the level is RNG where you spawn. There are is it? I think it's 6 or 7. It's sorry, it's somewhere around that. But there's a bunch of different locations where you can spawn, and you see this little mine shaft entrance here. You'll want to spawn as close to that as possible. Now, as I said, it's RNG, so you can't really manipulate where you spawn unless you like start to run over again, or you die. But you don't want to die, of course, in this level. So yeah, you just have to hope that you get a good spawn location. Oh, and this stuff that's happening right here, you might notice how the screen is turning grayscale. So because of the lack of game audio, it might have been hard to notice. But here, let me go back. Alright, so right here. So when the screen goes grayscale like this, and so there are several things that happen when the screen goes grayscale. Lauren moves much slowly, sprinting does next to nothing, and there's a bunch of whispering that happens. Like the in-game audios, there's just a bunch of whispering. So getting the whispering itself, just calling it whispering, that's RNG too. It sometimes happens at the beginning of a few levels, like including the 8 pages and Into the Abyss. Now you want to avoid that, but there's not much you can do since that is just RNG. So into the abyss. The goal of this level is similar to the 8 pages. In this level there are 6 generators. Well, it's more like 5 since the first one is always in a set location. So there are 5 generators that you need to find. Now more generators spawn than that. I think it's um it there are close to yeah, there are close to 20 different locations for the generators to spawn. And you want to go to as many of those as possible. You need to find 5 generators and activate them. Now, throughout this level, there is a enemy, Kate, Lauren's lost friend, and she's going to be chasing you throughout the level as soon as you activate the first real generator. She's not she's not the biggest nuisance ever. So you can see her right there. So basically, she'll be chasing after Lauren on foot, and the only way to if she's getting like too close to you, the only way you can really dispel her is to click your flashlight on and off, and that'll like scare her or whatever, and she'll stay still for a few seconds, giving you time to escape. Now, as for the generators themselves, there are, as I said, a bunch of different locations where they can spawn. Another somewhat useful way to locate them is you'll want to go around the hallways and look for a red light. Now, there are a few red lights that don't come from the generator, so it can be misleading at times. But usually you'll want to do like kind of you'll just kind of want to go in a loop like so. Wait, sorry, let me go back in the VOD. Alright, so as soon as I activate this generator. Alright, so this hallway that I'm entering right now, you'll see. Alright, so in this fence area, up to 2 generators can spawn. One, the generator that you can see here right now, and another on the other side of this hallway. Now, optimally, you'll want to get both of them, of course, but one on its own isn't too bad. However, if you don't get any, then it's better to, I don't think you can see it clearly in the VOD, but it's better to, there's a location to the right that you can run into, there's a hole you can run into there, and it's better to just, if you walk into this hallway, and if you don't see any generators, just run straight to the other one, because you don't want to waste time just going in a loop around a hallway that has no generators in it. Yeah, okay, so yeah, there's Kate. You can see how she put her arm in front of herself. That's how you stun her. And the level is just about over. So when you get all the generators, you have to make a beeline towards the lift, and then you can power it on to move to the next level. Now, something really stupid here. I don't think it's I think it may have happened to me once in runs, but if Kate gets too close to the lift, then she can actually like I don't really know how it works, but she can actually get onto the lift and attack you. Oh, and that's something I never explained. It never happened in this VOD, but when you get attacked by Kate, she tackles you and then she tackles you to the ground for a few seconds, and it's a 7-8 second time loss. And after she lets go of you, you move super slowly for a bit, and she just runs away from you. Now, obviously, you don't want that to happen. Now, the game is somewhat forgiving. On easy mode, at least, you can get caught by Kate 2 times. The first 2 times, she just does the tackling thing, and then the third time is when you die. So the game gives you some leniency if you get caught by Kate. Now, this level that I'm in right now, this is it's like sort of the 4th level. It's really not like a level. It's more of a gateway to the other 2 next levels. Regardless, this level is called Flashback. So yeah, there's really not much to say here. We're just making a beeline towards this little shack cabin thing. Actually, one thing of note here. So let me scroll back a bit. All right, so one thing to note here, there are two different paths here, and the upper path Should be able to see my mouse now. So the upper path right here, this is the path that you're going to be taking. It's only about a second or 2 seconds faster than taking the lower path, but still, it's just a minor time save, just something of note. Okay, so we're coming up upon. So as I said earlier, this level is more like it's not really a level. It's just a gateway to the two next levels, which are Homestead and Flashback. Now, the level that we do first, we access them through VHS tapes that Lauren watches on some TV. So we use the Homestead tape first, and we go to that level, and then we do escape after we finish Homestead. So in Homestead, this is the location of the last currently known skip, which is Fence Float Skip. We use this to skip a pretty large chunk of the level. I'll explain that when we get there, but for now, we are just going through the level as normal for the most part. So you enter this barn, you activate this roller thing so you can keep going. To the right, there are silos that we need to go inside of, but we can't because you need to power on a generator that's outside of them, and we power it on with a gas canister. We get the gas canister by going into a cellar that's nearby. Now, it's a somewhat small cellar. The gas canister's location of spawning is RNG, but it's really not that bad. The best possible location for it is you first enter the cellar, you make a left turn and then a right turn, and then it can be just right there. Now, there are either 3 or 4 different places for it to spawn, and 2 gas canisters can actually spawn at once. So as you can see there, I got the best possible spawn location for the gas canister. It's not a huge time loss if you don't get the best possible location for it, but it's just something of note. Okay, so we're coming up upon the silos. We just click on the generator that's on the outside of them, just to power it on with the gas canister, and then we can just go on our merry way. And then the skip, fence float skip is coming up in just a bit. Okay, so we're coming up on fence float skip. So real quick, I just want to say normally, how you're supposed to go through this is, I believe I got the, yeah, okay, so normally in this level, there's a key that's right here, although it's RNG, can spawn here, or back here, but basically you get the key, and then you go all the way back to the corn plantation, or whatever it is, fields, and then there's a chapel in the back, and then you unlock the door to the chapel with the key. So this skip that was recently found allows us to, well, skip doing all of that. Coming up right here. Okay, so fence float skip. So it's somewhat similar to house skip that we saw at the beginning in the prologue. So we're angling ourselves pretty specifically here. So with these 2 fence poles, and you want to have the camera kind of lined up like this. Now, unlike house skip, you have to crouch here, or you have to crouch down, bend down with the control key. So it is a difficult skip. It'll probably take a few tries. I got it, I believe, the second try here. So basically what I'm doing, it's, as I said, it's somewhat similar to house skip, but in this case, you angle yourself pretty precisely. You crouch down, you get near this fence pole, and you'll be able to feel there's an invisible wall there, but you can like ladder onto it, as I said with Housecape, where you just kind of wiggle back and forth on the ladder, and it also behaves somewhat like if you get high enough, then we don't want to get behind the fence, but we want to get on top of it, so we can walk on top of it and skip that chunk of the level with the key. So as we're seeing here, so I do the ladder-like motion, the wiggling. It's pretty specific, so falling off is expected at least maybe once or twice. But here I get it pretty cleanly. So once you get on top of the fence, you want to carefully align yourself with this fence right here that I'm on right now. And now we're just okay, so this area that I'm in right now is the final like hallway, or not hallway, the final pathway of this level. So coming up, we need to activate, so the reason we're coming back here instead of just making a beeline towards the end of the level, which is behind me right now, is because alright, so this chapel door, so when something turns red or white, it means you can interact with it. But this chapel door, we want to get close to it and click on it. Clicking on it activates the trigger for the end of the level, and it triggers Charlie, who is just a little boy proxified by Slenderman. So eventually he'll burst out of this door, and that's the trigger for the end of the level. He'll start to chase you to the end of the level. So we need to activate that trigger, because if we don't, then when we get to the place where the game would, or when we get to the place where the level would normally end, then the game would freeze. So now we're just running through, or at least going as fast as we can through this house here. We go upstairs, we go to the left, then we go to the right, then we fall down a hole, and then we leave the house through the front. And then there's going to be a short cutscene playing, and then the level will end here. Now normally it would be nighttime. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of already is, but the lighting would be darker. But because that's sequence breaking, yeah, no nighttime. Yeah, and that was the level. That was Homestead. Okay, so next up is Escape. So this level is pretty dang short. So all it is, you're playing as Kate before she was turned into a bad guy, and we're in her house, and the goal of this level is to close all the windows and doors. Just all the windows and doors in your house, you just close them. It's a pretty interesting gameplay idea, if I do say so myself. So you don't actually have to close, or most of the time you don't have to close all of the windows and doors. You can close I believe it's 8 or 9 doors you can close, and then what will happen is Slenderman will appear inside the house. Now it's not always guaranteed, like sometimes you have to wait for a few seconds even after you've finished closing all the doors and windows. And then once Slenderman appears inside the house, you have to make a beeline back towards Kate's room, and then the level will end right there. So yeah, it's a pretty short level, but you don't want to get too close to Slenderman. When he appears, that text will appear, and that's when you go towards Kate's room. Okay, so this is the last level of the game, aptly titled The Arrival. And get it? It's the name of the game. So, The Arrival. So, the first part of this level is very simple. It's just movement up towards the hill. Now, you see that cell tower or radio tower, whatever, in the distance with the red blinking light? Or maybe it's blinking, I don't know. But we're just running towards that. That's like the end goal of this level. Now, the first part isn't difficult at all. It's just running up a hill. And then the next part of the level, we'll be coming up upon that in a moment. Okay, so one part here. Alright, okay, so I pulled this off sort of not poorly, but it was just a minor bad execution. So you might have, I'm gonna scroll back a little. So you see how there are these rocks here, right? So I'm sprinting, right? So I'm walking off the rocks, and and then when I land, Lauren stumbles for a bit and she stops moving. And I have to wait for a bit before I can start moving again. Now, it's a minor time loss, but it's just, you don't want that to happen. Optimally, you'll just want to be walking off the rock so Lauren doesn't stumble and stop like that for a moment. Alright, so we're coming up upon the end game. So the screen turns red, and this is a forest fire that was caused by Kate, because she went crazy and lit her house on fire. So we're just running through the fire. Now, we don't want to get... Obviously, we don't want to die here. We don't want to touch the fire too much. It's somewhat lenient on how many times you can touch the fire, but I've never actually tested it myself. Now, Slender Man appears in this part as well, and you can see him sometimes, like he was visible just there to the right. He extends his tentacles in a bid to grab you, and he'll often disappear. As long as you don't let yourself get entangled by the tentacles too much, then you're fine. And same thing as previous Slender levels applies. If you get way too close to him, you'll also die. Okay, so I'm gonna pause it here. So the beginning of the end of this level, there's a key here to the left. Now this key has several spawn locations. That's also RNG, but this is the best possible location for it to be at, because then you can just grab the key and run straight towards the door that you need to unlock. Alright, so we get the key and then we unlock the door, and then flashlight goes dead, of course. It's a horror game. So we're running through these hallways. Now what we want to do is we want to hug the wall, preferably to the left. And alright, so sometimes Charlie, the boy that I mentioned earlier, he can actually attack you in these rooms. Now we're not quite certain why that happens. But just if you walk into the wrong position, he'll come up and attack you, and you can die here, and that loses a pretty fair amount of time. So we don't want that happening, of course. And then you just run towards the end of this hallway. There's a charred body there. That was the body of the guy we were playing as in Homestead. Rest in peace. So we click on the tape recorder that's next to him, and you're not missing out on much. It's just a bunch of screaming as Slenderman is killing people, which is nice. So we're standing by this door here, and after the tape recording ends, all the fire goes out, and Charlie bursts through the door, and then this part of the level ends, and then we're taken to the very end of the game. So we're coming upon that in a sec. Okay, so we're coming up upon it. Okay, so we're in the basement of a charred, burnt down house that was actually in Prologue, but of course we never go there because there's no reason to. Now, in this part of the level, the very last part of this final level is there are two pages on the opposite ends of the room, and you're supposed to grab both of them. Now, they're on these walls, like this one is on this brick wall here, but you may have noted, here, I'll scroll back a bit. Now, you may have noticed, I'm gonna pause. So you noticed how I was actually pretty darn far away from the page, but I was still actually able to click on it. So if you can get that, that's always a time save, because you don't have to run to the very end of the corridor or whatever. Basically the same thing there. That was a piece of paper that was on the table. And now for the last part of this run, we're walking upstairs, and then we're just making a beeline towards crying that's coming from Kate. So we're running towards her, and then we get near her. She attacks us and presumably kills Lauren. And from here, there's no more input, and the run is about to end. Now Lauren's legs will get pulled off screen, and the screen goes black. When the screen goes black, that's the moment that you stop the timer. So that'll happen in a sec. And yeah, bam. That is the end of the run. So yeah, that was the entire run. So all in all, it's about, so accounting for worst RNG, the run, which is why my submission is for 25.5 minutes. So that's accounting for pretty bad RNG because alright, so several things. So either bad RNG or bad execution of fence float skip, which is a difficult skip, so it might take a few tries. But yeah, fence float skip and accounting for bad RNG, particularly in Into the Abyss level where you're getting the generators and Kate is chasing you. But yeah, that was my submission video. Thank you for watching.